Things around the NHL are going to be getting serious quickly. We have a lot of names that can be tossed out there as potential trade fodder/trade bait, and a number of internal decisions that need to be made, with superstar players at the helm. In today's video, I wanted to cite one of the latest episodes of Canucks Central from yesterday, Sportsnet 650 Monday afternoon radio broadcasting, and the episode which features Frank Seravalli. Sat and Bick end up talking to Seravalli about the Ottawa Senators, the Vancouver Canucks GM search, as well as the playoffs as a whole. I'm going to leave a link in the description if you want to listen to this 20-minute audio podcast yourself. It's a really great listen, and I want to paraphrase a lot of what Frank Seravalli was talking about towards the end of the podcast episode itself. Obviously, these radio hits on Sportsnet 650, one guest segment is going to be about half an hour. So, towards the end of Seravalli's half hour, he ended up making some comments that I thought were very, very intriguing. Sat and Bick end up introducing the topic of Brady Tkachuk of the Ottawa Senators, and they start asking Seravalli, hey man, what do you think could actually happen with this dude? Because Matthew Tkachuk forced his way out of Calgary, Quinn Hughes forced his way out of Vancouver. Could Brady Tkachuk do the same thing? And this is where Seravalli opens up a can of worms. Frank Seravalli firstly talks about Brady Tkachuk and says that there are a number of things that potentially can go into whether or not Brady Tkachuk wants out or sticks around. 1. It is the idea as to whether or not Brady, the captain of the team, can win with this current Sens group. Might I remind you, he wasn't the only one that did really poorly statistically for Ottawa against Carolina in their first-round series. Timmy Stu was also pretty disappointing. The second notion that Seravalli alludes to that could potentially influence whether or not Brady Tkachuk could be interested in leaving is the Olympics. The fact that Brady was one of the multiple American players that was greeted with a lot of difficulty upon his return to Canada, particularly for things related to what he did after the win on the ice itself. A lot of Team USA and their antics, quote-unquote, people whom they were around and places they visited. This was all a big deal for many Canadian fans in Ottawa, so you can bring that up as an element that questions whether or not Brady would be interested in sticking around in this particular environment. It's those two things, and then Seravalli eventually says at the end that, hey, where there's smoke, there is usually fire, and even though this is something that we can't really comment on or definitively conclude, Brady Tkachuk has been discussed in so much stuff that the conversation is worth having. Now, whether or not you agree or disagree, you can let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. But this is where Frank Seravalli on the podcast goes into even more crazy, wacko, Woody Harrelson in 2012 territory, but it's the best kind of Woody Harrelson in 2012 territory, because Frank Seravalli then says that he thinks there is a lottery ticket's chance that this NHL offseason can potentially be one of the craziest ones that we have ever seen. You gotta think about a number of names. First, of course, Brady Tkachuk. His name is in there. We've spoken about this guy. We've made videos about him. Where there's smoke, there is usually fire. We'll see how quickly this one burns. But Seravalli then hypothesizes, what is Auston Matthews and his outlook with the Maple Leafs going to look like, depending on who gets hired as the new GM? What's going to happen if the Edmonton Oilers lose today against the Anaheim Ducks in Game 5? Does Connor McDavid decide that he is fully on board with sticking out the next 2 years with Edmonton? Does Zach Werenski want to stick around in Columbus after the comments that were made by his head coach? Frank Seravalli doesn't necessarily allude that anybody is going to be moved per se, but he does bring up the possibility of all these ideas getting tossed into the trade mix that we can see this offseason, which I do think probably should be explored more. Not because it's likely that a whole bunch of superstars are just going to be moved, but because we might not have any other choice. You see, this year's free agency period is not going to be all too exciting. Artemi Panarin got signed, a bunch of the big names are off the board. Who are we looking at that's going to be a superstar top-tier free agent? There's nobody. Everybody's signed. Everybody's already committed to another team. Everybody's already there. So, really, the UFA class of 2026 is limited to just some middle-tier guys. Like, okay, great, Teddy Bluger's a free agent. Evander Kane. Okay, let's just not focus on Canucks guys. Sergei Bobrovsky. What's the future of Darren Radish? What does Boone Jenner and Charlie Coyle, what do those guys look like? It's not really super crazy this year. Alex Tuck is fine, but then again, he's a Buffalo dude. They're doing well. He might re-sign. Who knows? But because there's going to be so much money available for teams to spend, it really opens the door to having some serious conversations on guys that might be a little uncomfortable with how their situations are playing out. Auston Matthews, if everything doesn't work out for the Toronto Maple Leafs and they decide they got to go through a rebuild, Auston could go down the same path that Quinn Hughes and Matthew Tkachuk went down. You could talk about Zach Werenski in Columbus, not a Canadian situation, but one of these things where he might be uncomfortable with the way his team is progressing and the culture issues and people within or outside of the organization calling out Columbus for their lack of desire to not lose. First it was Patrick Laine a year ago, now it was Rick Bowness. Zach Werenski responding negatively to both scenarios. Is this guy on his last legs? We've already seen a ton of Blue Jackets fans talking about how Werenski, while talented, could potentially be the problem, quote-unquote, with the culture in Columbus. Is it Boone Jenner's team to lose, or is it Zach Werenski's blue line to get traded away from? And then you have the Connor McDavid thing. I mean, you can say that it's not fair, really, for Connor this season, especially with the fact that he's definitely not himself. He's not healthy. The guy does not have that same bite as he usually has had throughout the course of his NHL career. We'll see whether or not that follows through in game number 5 today as the Ducks and the Oilers play off one more time. This is totally going to determine Connor McDavid's future in the NHL, isn't it? If the Oilers win 5, they win 6, and then they go to 7, then we have a different conversation to talk about. But if Connor McDavid and the Oilers cannot get it done, if Tristan Jarry totally lets in a few stinkers and the Oilers are down early and Anaheim maintains it and then they score an empty net goal at the end, if Anaheim wins 4-1, I don't really know if Connor McDavid is going to stick around with the Oilers in the short or long term. It becomes a lot more interesting, and I think Seravalli is right when you bring up all these guys whose identities are so tied with these Canadian franchises that they are a part of. Matthews, Brady, McDavid. And this is an offseason where potentially all of them could be on the block if everything aligns perfectly. Not to mention Zach Werenski, and then not even to mention Jason Robertson. Although, I think it's unfair for Robertson. He's part of a team that's still doing some pretty competitive things in the playoffs. Edmonton, it's not like they're doing that competitively against Anaheim, isn't it? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Again, I'll leave a link in the description to that Frank Seravalli Sat and Bick Canucks Central audio hit, so you could go out there and listen to that yourself. It's a good listen. I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you think the future of Matthews, McDavid, Brady Tkachuk, Zach Werenski is going to look like? And how do you feel about Seravalli's pondering about their futures? I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.